William Faulkner once observed that the past isn't dead, it's not even past. The alarming events that we've just witnessed occurring around the world underscores the truth of this insight and the urgency of my father's message of eternal vigilance, lest the evils of the past take hold again. It is a message I take to heart. And yet, when I think of the legacies of my father and President Perez, the great man we honor today, I think of them not only as watchmen on the tower, but also as leaders characterized by buoyant optimism and a hopeful dedication to tomorrow. As President Perez has said in his own very poetic way, "At dusk, take stock of the errors of the day. At dawn, do not forget the night's dreams. I have learned that a dream is only the beginning of a better tomorrow." In following and studying the life of this great man, I have distilled a few simple and profound lessons from the Shimon Peres Book of Living that I would like to briefly share. The first lesson is, don't let yourself be daunted by the odds. Ignore them. From the very instant of Israel's birth, the odds against this tiny nation of 650,000 citizens surviving, let alone becoming a vibrant democracy, were overwhelming. But survive they did, blossoming into the Middle East's most scientifically advanced, culturally diverse, vibrant, and stable democratic nation. Shimon Peres and the other brave young leaders of that time ignored the odds against them, keeping their eyes firmly fixed on the prize. For Shimon Peres, neither hopelessness nor failure was ever an option, and in his spirit, we would be well advised to remember, the odds can be beaten. A second profound lesson from President Perez's life is the recognition that one's present adversaries do not need to remain one's enemies forever. This conviction has animated his decades of determined pursuit of reconciliation between Israel and its neighbors. He has said, "The Palestinians are our closest neighbors. I believe they may become our closest friends." This ability to imagine a future that is radically different and better than the present is essential if intractable problems are ever to be successfully overcome. Throughout his career of public service, Shimon Peres has met with countless leaders in the Middle East that some would consider to be enemies of Israel. In 2007, he became the first Israeli leader to address the legislature of a Muslim nation when he spoke to the Turkish parliament. And just a few weeks ago, he joined Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas at the Vatican for Pope Francis's prayer summit. There are many instances of history bearing out the truth of President Perez's vision of swords beaten into plowshares and enemies turned into friends. And in our own nation's history, we have experienced that with the bitter enemies we confronted in World War II. Such reconciliation is neither easy nor inevitable, but it is possible. All of which leads to the third crucial lesson from the Perez Book of Life, the pragmatic wisdom of being an incurable optimist. He has said, "I look at where we started and where we are today, and I think to myself, to be an optimist is so logical, it is so practical." Not only does a spirit of optimism enable one to dream big dreams and eventually achieve them, it also changes the quality of the life one leads. Once again, quoting the always quotable Shimon Peres, "Optimists and pessimists die the same way. They just live differently. I prefer to live as an optimist." Three simple lessons from a life lived in full. Dare to defy the odds, believe in the possibility of reconciliation, and live your life with an irrepressible spirit of optimism and hope. These are lessons that can not only change a life, they can change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina, for your eloquent words and your extraordinary leadership of the Foundation. Our next speaker serves as the 47th Vice President of the United States, and for as long as I can remember, Vice President Biden has occupied a mythic place in the life of our family. Other than the voters of California, he was the last person my grandfather ever worked for, and having been raised on stories of his grit, his courage, and commitment, when I came to Washington, he was the only person I wanted to work for. His leadership on the Foreign Relations Committee helped end a genocide in Bosnia and prevent one in Kosovo. Whether fighting against hatred abroad or passing landmark legislation to end violence against women at home, his public life has been an unending campaign on behalf of the powerless and the persecuted. This would be enough to earn our admiration for most politicians, but I have to say in the case of Vice President Biden, he goes further, and he evidences that same commitment, that same compassion when no one is looking. In the case of my family in 2008, when we were going through our darkest moment following the death of my grandfather and father in quick succession, he spent what seemed like countless hours on the phone encouraging my mother as she stood by my father's bedside, and imparting to me, when I returned to his staff, the lessons from his all too vast experience dealing with tragedy. There is no one in American politics with whom my grandfather felt a deeper connection, and there is no one who we would rather have with us today to present this year's Lantos Prize. Vice President Biden.
Thank you. To Micah, thank you very, very much for those generous words. And it's, Mr. President, I feel like I'm a Lantos son or younger brother, and I mean that sincerely. Tom Lantos sort of adopted me. He, I have this bad habit of always quoting Irish poets, and my colleagues in the Senate think I do it because I'm Irish. I don't do it for that reason, with all due respect to other poets. They're just simply the best poets in the world. That's why I do it. And Joyce talked about education, and he was best describing Tom Lantos' impact on me. He said, education is not lighting a flame. My flame was burning awfully bright, Mr. Ambassador. I was passionate about what I wanted to do. But that wasn't the education. He said, it's not lighting a flame, it's filling a bucket. Filling a bucket. Tom Lantos filled my bucket, and that is not hyperbole. Tom Lantos, I had the great, great honor of not only becoming, in real terms, part of his family and my family part of his, but he taught me so much. I learned one other thing from Tom Lantos. We Irish are accused of having the Blarney Stone, and the Blarney Stone allegedly is why some Irishmen other than me are loquacious. But I found out when I went to Budapest, the Blarney Stone was stolen from the Hungarians. Jesus, God almighty, I tell you. And Tom would go on and that will telling me how when the Huns came east or west, they split at a certain point. Some went to Ireland, some went to Hungary. He actually tried to convince me of that. But I believed it. Tom Lantos, Joe Biden. Anyway, the Lantos family have been great friends of mine for a long time, and so I apologize, Mr. President, for subjecting you to two medals in a row, where I am the keynote speaker. And the poor president had to listen to me as he received the Congressional Gold Medal. So I apologize for twice in one day, Mr. President. And besides that, the president and I had lunch yesterday with President Obama and taking part in this morning's ceremony and now. But Mr. President, it's always an honor to be with you, and you've stood for everything that is close to my heart and everything Tom Lantos educated me about. You know, Tom was not only a fine man, Tom was a first-rate intellect and a man like you, Mr. President, of great optimism. After surviving, Tom could have been forgiven if he decided that he would choose a more quiet life. But like so many survivors, he chose to embrace life and to change it for people who were in trouble. He embarked on a lifelong fight against injustice and for human rights, and not just here in the United States, not just for the Jewish people, but quite frankly, not just for the state of Israel, but around the world. He was the leading spokesperson in the United States Congress for all issues relating to those having to do with anti-Semitism and support for Israel, but it went so far beyond that. Tom was the first guy to talk about the genocide that was taking place in the Congo. Tom was the first guy to encourage me to get so deeply involved with Slobodan Milosevic because what was happening was genocide. And they weren't Jews. In this case, they were Muslims. Tom Lantos, as the old expression goes, he walked the walk. He lived by what he said. And his life was an embodiment of a lesson I learned from my father. My father used to say, when I get asked why I wrote the Violence Against Women Act, was my mother, it was my father. My father was a gentle man, and my father taught us in the time any of us can remember in our family, that the cardinal sin, the most egregious sin any man or woman could commit, was the abuse of power. Whether it was the abuse of financial power, psychological power, or physical power. It was the organizing principle of my father's life. And I think of Tom Lantos' life, the abuse of power. Tom Lantos reminds us that used to remind us that the veneer of civilization, to quote him, is paper thin. He said, we're guardians and we can never rest. And he never did. He really never did. He was gallant, he was eloquent, he was charming, he was fearless. He taught me and so many of my colleagues so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think there's a greater honor one could receive than to receive the medal that you're about to receive, Mr. President, in the name of Tom Lantos. And I don't think there's a better honoree. Mr. President, like him, you're gallant. And you've heard me say it here, you've heard me say it in Austria, you've heard me say it in Sweden, you've heard me every conference I've ever been with you. I am with other world leaders. You are, and I'll say it again, I'm repeating myself and I apologize. You are the most eloquent man I have ever known in my life. Although Tom Lantos was even more charming than you are. But it's one hell of a combination. You know, you lost many relatives in the Holocaust, yet, as I'll not repeat what Tomika said, but none of that slowed you up. It just lit the fire and filled the pail. I remember when I was with Tom the first time, that's not true, first time I went to Israel. And I was hearing from all the leaders of Israel, having just gone through the Six-Day War and what was happening and how horrible things were, and I was getting incredibly depressed. And one of the Israeli leaders looked at me and he said, don't look so down. And I looked back and I said, why? I mean, why not? You've just painted this picture of Armageddon for Israel. He said, we Israelis have a secret weapon in our struggle with the Arabs. We have no place else to go. We have no place else to go. And you know, I don't think there's another man or woman in the history of your young country that has done more to guarantee that Israel would always be there for all Jews worldwide. That realization energized an entire generation of leadership that you represent, Mr. President. Israel's success, as I said, I hope only the second thing I'll repeat today, is that everyone looks, when I talk to people about Israel, particularly those not deeply involved in the Jewish community, and I talk about Israel, which as some of you know, I want to do. And they'll say, well, that's, of course, as if there's an inevitability that Israel would be as strong and vibrant as she is today. The last thing that was inevitable was the existence of this state of Israel as we know it. It was willed into existence. It was willed into existence by the president and his colleagues. We talk about the founding generation that we have here in the United States. My grandpa Finnegan used to say, Joey, there's two things that happen. God takes care of Irishmen who drink too much, and the United States. Well, the truth of the matter is there's something to it. Think of the possibility of trying to replicate the founding fathers we had. Imagine today if we had to write a constitution from scratch. Where are the Madisons? Where are the Jeffersons? Although he did not write the Constitution. And Israel, at the moment of its birth, had the most remarkable generation of leaders that any country has assembled in any one place, in any point in time. And although you started off as a 23-year-old kid at the feet of Ben-Gurion, the responsibility you were handed was awesome, absolutely awesome. Mr. President, where everybody else, you've been brave, you've taken brave positions, you've taken positions that run counter to the conventional wisdom of your country at the moment, as well as in other countries. But the thing I love about you is you see a partner for peace. You believe there's a possibility, and you pursue it. You pursue it regardless of what the political consequences are. And the good news for Israel, and the good news for us, you've been right. You've been right. Mr. President, in the great cause that has been your passion, a fight for Israel and the survival of the Jewish people, the survival and security and greatness as a light unto nations, you have seemed in the process to discover the fountain of youth along the way. And that, again, is not hyperbole. I have never seen a man with as much energy. You know, there's a great, I get asked because the rumor is I'm getting older. And I get asked about, my age. And instead of quoting you, I quote a great American baseball player. His name was Satchel Paige. He used to play in what they called the Negro Leagues when there was prejudice and no blacks were allowed to play in the major leagues. And finally, at age 45, he's probably one of the greatest pitchers in the history of American baseball. He got taken up to the majors. And he pitched for, I think, another 5 years. And I think it was his 47th birthday. All the sports writers were in his locker room. And they said, well, Satch, how's it feel to be 47 and still in the bigs? And his response was, he said, guys, look, here's how I look at age. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? Think about that. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? And the answer to that question tells me more about a man or a woman than almost any question I could ask them. Mr. President, I'm 42, but you're 25. You're 25. You haven't changed in terms of your optimism, your energy, your commitment, just your persona. And I had the great honor, no, you would not remember me, but I met you over 38 years ago in Israel. It's astounding to me how you never change. So when this is over, I want to talk to you about a few things. I know you're big on science and technology. Have you found something we don't know yet? You know, I remember, and as you all know, the thing that can't go without being mentioned is the great, not only sense of irony, but sense of humor of the president. I wasn't there, but I remember hearing that when you met the foreign minister of Ireland, you said, "It's an honor for the representative of the chosen people to meet a representative of the frozen people." I don't know if that's true, but I heard that, and it's pretty darn good. I hope he took it with a sense of humor. You know, the thing I love about President Perez, he's always looking for the next, and I mean this sincerely, the next big idea, whether it's nanotechnology, electric cars, stem cells, human brains, solar energy, because I think something you said we should all take to heart. You said that the reason you like the sun is because it's more democratic, more permanent, and not a member of the Arab League or any other league. And an awful lot can flow from it. You know, Mr. President, there's much more to say, but I'm not going to say it. I'm told that when someone gave the president the traditional Jewish blessing, "May you live 120 years," his response was, "Is that it?" And he's making good on where it is. Mr. President, we know that even though next year will be the first time in Israel's history as a nation that you will be a private citizen, the first time, I think that's astounding. For the first time in the history of your nation, you will be a private citizen. We all know you too well, Mr. President. Your voice, your wisdom, your guiding hand will remain present. You are not going to go quietly into the night. I know you too well, and thank God for Israel, you will not. And as you do become a private citizen, know that you and Israel have an unmistakable, a heartfelt friendship from not only President Obama and me, but the American people and everybody in this room. And we pray. We pray for the safe return of those 3 teenagers who've been missing in the West Bank. So, Mr. President, every nation needs a soul. Every nation needs someone that is the embodiment of their heart. That's what you are for Israel. And they're never going to let you retire. God bless you, Mr. President, and I look forward to seeing you many, many more times.